Hey heroes, welcome back to Panels to Plastic. I'm Josh, and welcome back to 2026. Just disregard the fact that it's already February, and we're 1/12 of the way through the year. Belated Happy New Year to you. I took some time off, but I thought now would be a good time to take stock of where my collection is at and where I want it to go. So these are my collecting goals for 2026. Let's waste no more time. Let's get into it. 2025 was a transitional year for me in terms of toy collecting, and I think I'm seeing this vibe across a lot of collectors. Or maybe it's that I'm being influenced by the toy influencers that I follow, and so I'm kind of following in their lead. But with price hikes and tariffs and whatever else, everybody's starting to be more selective in what they're buying. Well, I'm kind of shifting in two directions, and I've talked about this before on the channel. I'm shifting towards, being like 100% vintage all the time. Vintage is the thing to go. It's a cost-effective way to collect. There is a DIY element to it, a creative element that I enjoy. And it's just the aesthetic and the vibes is off the scale with vintage stuff. And then there is a shift towards like more higher end collecting, and we'll talk about that. I'm thinking of dipping my toes in the Hot Toys water. Anyway, that's where I'm at. In 2025, I phased out a lot of my Marvel Legends. I sold off, I still have my Marvel Legends, I can't let go of them just yet. I sold off a lot of McFarlane DC Multiverse. I had one day where I was trying to rearrange that shelf, and I just could not get them to stand up on their ankles, and I just went, you know what, these are all going on eBay this afternoon, and they sold very quickly, so that was nice. Black Series, I still hold a candle for Black Series. I have tried to kind of phase that out of my collection a little bit, but to be honest, I actually just bought a bunch of Phantom Menace Black Series figures on clearance in the January sales, and I didn't make a top 10 toys of 2025 video because I honestly didn't buy enough new toys to do a top 10, but if I had, Sebulba here would have been number one. This is just such an incredible, just looks so good. The detail is amazing. The engineering is amazing. The fact that he can stand up on his two kind of hind arms just is incredible. Anyway, but I'm not here to review the Black Series Sebulba. The point is that I'm trying to be a bit more selective about what I'm buying and curate my collection. There's also, I'm running out of space. I have a very small toy collection. The agreement with my wife years ago was that my collection can basically be my YouTube studio, my backdrop, and that's it. It doesn't extend to any other area of the house. So I have these shelves behind me, and once they're full, something's got to give. Anyhow, in terms of vintage toys, this year, there are only two lines that I have kind of a checklist for, that I've got an end goal in mind for, and that is Kenner Aliens, which I have behind me, and my Toy Biz X-Men collection, which is currently in a tub, actually. But those are the two lines that I am kind of actively collecting all of the time when I go to toy fairs or when I'm up late at night scrolling eBay. Those are the things that I'm typically looking for. And I'm not a completist on either of those lines, but I have a checklist of figures that I want to get in those lines, that one day I will have them all and I will be happy. Because that's how toy collecting works, right? You get the thing and then you're happy forever. But everything else vintage is just vibes to me. I recently went to a new vintage Star Wars shop that's open near me in Yorkshire, called the Bunker, I think, the Star Wars Bunker. And I picked up some vintage Cantina aliens. I got a Hammerhead and a Greedo. Listen, I am not actively collecting Kenner Star Wars. My Star Wars collecting is very sporadic. I pick up some Black Series, I pick up some Power of the Force, I pick up some original Episode 1, and I pick up some vintage Kenner, and it's just kind of, like I say, it's vibes, whatever I like. And I'm particularly like creatures. I'm into creature designs, and I really just love those original Cantina creatures in the Kenner line, just how colourful they are, how kind of candy coded they are, and just how delicious that Greedo looks. Green toys. I think this is why I'm such a big Hulk fan. Anything that looks like it's like sour apple flavored, I am so into. So that Greedo, I saw him, he had to join my collection.
It's the Jurassic Park Command Compound.
I continue to be on a bit of a Jurassic Park jag. Since last year, I got very hyped for Jurassic World Rebirth. And even though the movie, didn't blow my socks off or anything, I was enjoying kind of picking up the odd dinosaur toy here and there. And again, for me, it comes down to like creature designs. And there's something particularly about the Velociraptors and the T-Rexes. It's inherently cool. This is why kids love them. But I just love, in a toy where you get all that scale texture and the way that different toy companies have kind of tackled that, and the painting on different toys. So even though I picked up some of the Hammond collection, I've got the Hammond collection Rex back there. I'm not, going deep on that line or anything. And actually, I think what I would probably like to get at some point is an original Kenner Red Rex. It's just finding one of those in good condition because of the rubber skin is proving to be a bit tricky. Or actually, there was a model kit released back in the 90s when the first movie came out. I can't remember the company who made this model kit, but it was cast. It's like a vinyl model, paint it yourself and everything, but it was cast off an actual Stan Winston Studios maquette. So, it has that cool, like, kind of not screen use per se, but studio lineage there. And that's another thing we're going to talk about. For me, toy collecting is about kind of like owning the object from the film. And I think one of the things that I've kind of got bored with Marvel Legends and stuff like that is that it doesn't look like the source material. I don't know. I don't get the feeling when I hold a Marvel Legends Spider-Man figure that I'm holding the Spider-Man that I love. I can't really put my finger on that. Anyway, speaking of superheroes, another thing that I'm kind of actively hunting for this year would be the Toy Biz supersized Hulk, the big soft vinyl thing. I made a video last year about the soft vinyl Spider-Man from this line, and I would like to get the Hulk to go along with it. But when I made that Spider-Man video, people in the comments in America were saying, these are not hard to find. These are, 10 a penny in the US, but they were not released in the UK as far as I'm aware. So they are tricky to get, and the Hulk especially is tricky to find here in the UK.
It's Megazord.
Another thing while we're talking about kind of the big vintage toys that I'm on the hunt for is an original deluxe Megazord 1993 from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I'm not like a huge Power Rangers guy, but I have been picking up the main Rangers in the 8-inch line from back in the day because I had some of those as a kid and they're kind of nostalgic for me. And I think it would be nice to set up one of my Kallaxes back here with the Rangers and the Megazord behind. I'm not even sure if the Megazord would fit in an IKEA Kallax cube, which is a problem that I frequently have, is that I buy toys that are too big for my shelf. But yeah, that original Megazord just still hasn't been beaten, in my opinion. It just, it's got so much shelf presence, looks incredible, and that would kind of cap off my Power Rangers collecting for me. And the final thing while we're talking about vintage toys is that recently I've been feeling extremely nostalgic for kind of early 2000s era McFarlane stuff. I remember back in the day when McFarlane's website was spawn.com and going on there when I was like a teenager in high school. And at that point, I was done with toys and everything like that. But there was something about the kind of like the horror toys and the Music Maniacs and stuff like that felt legitimate, because it was like, no, these are adult collectibles, and it's music. It's not superheroes. It's Iron Maiden or it's AC/DC. So this feels okay for me to have. And I didn't get a bunch of those. I did have the Iron Maiden Trooper Eddie back in the day, but that was the only one. But I remember going into like non-toy shops, like record shops and like novelty gift shops and things like that, and you would see the McFarlane stuff and all the horror figures, and I used to really enjoy looking at those, even though I never really bought them. But it's cool to see like a Freddy Krueger or a Ghostface or whatever it was on the shelves like that. And in those days I was like 11, 12, 13, and I was really intrigued by the idea of having like horror toys on your shelf, because I was still at that age where I was kind of a little bit freaked out by like Pinhead, for example. But there was a part of me that wanted to own it, and I was, grappling with those feelings of like, why am I like scared shitless of this thing, and yet I want it on my shelf. And that's a cool feeling. That's like the coolest time to be kind of into horror, I think, is when you're like in your early teens and you're watching horror films with your mates, and you're all a bit like freaked out, but you have to kind of put on some bravado. It's like I'm extremely nostalgic for that. Also from that era of McFarlane, there was a series of Spawn figures where Todd kind of revisited the first wave of Spawn. I think the wave was called like Spawn Classics. It came out in 2001, and he did like updated versions of Spawn, Medieval Spawn, the Clown, Violator, Tremor. But they were very much in like the Greg Capullo style, which was, what was hot at the time. And so firstly, I just love toys that recreate comic art styles. That's the whole reason for collecting superhero toys for me, is to be like, this thing that I love on the page is now in 3D. And secondly, this is like prime time for McFarlane just going, so over the top with sculpt and paint. And yes, they were basically statues and not action figures, but compared to today where they're like, articulated action figures with not that great articulation, and they have no sculpt and no paint, I would take these any day. And also from that era, I'm a huge Kiss fan. I have been waiting patiently for someone like NECA to make ultimate Kiss action figures. They did the Ben Cooper ones last year, so who knows, maybe this year we'll get an announcement of ultimate Kiss figures. But if not, I'm just going to buy those McFarlane ones because they look really cool to me. They still hold up. Got my Kiss hockey jersey on today. I am in full Kiss mania mode. All right, so that's vintage, and that's really what I'm going to be focusing on in 2026. But as I said, I do predict that this is going to be the year that I buy my first Hot Toys figure. I don't know, it's something I've been kind of circling around for the past few years, and I just want to try it out and see if it's what I'm looking for, because I do love the kind of screen accuracy, and I love the cloth goods and stuff like that. I just want to try it on for size. I'm not saying I'm going to, become one of these guys that has a full modular case full of Hot Toys, as much as I would love to be able to afford to do that. And I'm not 100% sure what it's going to be. There's a lot of stuff coming out from Hot Toys where I'm just like, that could be the one, that could be the one. For example, the Big Chap Alien is up for pre-order, my favourite creature design of all time. There's the Boosh Leia, which is my favourite Star Wars design of all time. There's a Jar Jar Binks come in, and just anything Jar Jar is just so nostalgic for me. And so kind of like really takes me back to the time when I was kind of obsessed with toys and action figures. And then there's an Arnie Mr. Freeze up for pre-order at the moment, which costs an absolute bomb, but I maintain is one of the greatest costume designs in any superhero movie. It's just so intricate and beautiful, and the different textures and the different metallics and the kind of perloids and the neon lights and just everything. It's just completely maximalist joy. And I think one of the things that appeals to me about kind of getting into the 1/6 space is the idea of like having one piece to represent like a fandom, rather than a bunch of like 20 quid, 25, 30 quid figures of like Marvel Legends or DC Multiverse or something like that. And prices are up across the board. I can say that I'm getting priced out of like Marvel Legends and stuff like that, but Hot Toys cost double what they did like a few years ago. But for whatever reason, I feel like I can justify a Hot Toys more now. I don't know, it just makes more sense to me. Rather than buying like a wave of 6 Marvel Legends figures, you buy one Hot Toys figure and it seems like a better value proposition to me. And elsewhere in 1/6 land, there are companies like Trick or Treat Studios who are doing much more affordable 1/6 figures. And I bought their life-size Gizmo last year and just absolutely love that thing. I'm kind of like really obsessed with Trick or Treat Studios at the moment. I love going through their catalogue, and it's not all for me. Some of it I can just enjoy vicariously. But I think a 1/6 Michael Myers is going to be making his way into my collection sooner rather than later. Speaking of Trick or Treat Studios and just poring over their catalogue every year, I'm kind of like really getting back into horror. I've always been a big horror fan, and actually before I started Panels to Pixels, I would say I was more active in the kind of horror fandom than I was in comics and superheroes and things like that. And I've been reconnecting with that stuff. Also, I'm super into music, and there's a lot of masked bands at the moment. I love Kiss. So I think the culmination of all this stuff is that I've just been like super fascinated with masks recently, and not in an eyes wide shut kind of way, but just I like the idea that especially like a lot of these slasher movies that I love, they used off the shelf masks, and so this stuff is attainable for fans. You can get a screen accurate mask of these like kind of slasher icons for relatively inexpensively. And also my display is all built around the IKEA Kallax and these kind of cubes, and those are perfect for displaying masks. A lot of mask collectors use those IKEA Kallax. So I've kind of been perusing the mask collecting kind of sub communities and really enjoying people's setups. And I'm just like, as I'm kind of like getting a bit bored with the action figure space, I think this is where my collection is going to shift a little bit. So this year, the company Fun World, who made the original Ghostface mask back in the day that was used in Scream, it already existed as a mask, and Wes Craven chose it to use in Scream. They've announced that they're doing a 30th anniversary kind of Ghostface mask. Now, the Ghostface mask has never been out of production since the 90s, thanks to the popularity of Scream. And there have been anniversary masks before. And I don't claim to be an expert on the variances of all of those, but I do know that there is like a Gen 1, which was what was used on screen in Scream. That's a tongue twister. But that's the one that, the fans covet. That's the one that everybody wants. And those cost a lot of money. And this year, for the first time, Fun World are saying that they've 3D scanned or whatever they're going to do. They are going back to that Gen 1, and it's going to be as close to that first mask as possible. So that means in terms of like color and the shroud that they're using and hand cutting the eye holes and all this stuff, super nerdy. As I say, I'm not an expert on this by any means, but the idea of being able to go into a Halloween shop this year and be able to get something that is like close to screen accurate for the price of an action figure is very exciting to me. So I can't wait for that to come out. Also, Trick or Treat Studios make a plethora of Michael Myers masks. Halloween and Scream are my two favorite slasher franchises. Halloween, the first Halloween, is like maybe my favorite film of all time. And so Trick or Treat make a bunch of Michael Myers masks, and they do a 1975 Captain Kirk mask, which was the basis for the original Michael Myers mask. They took a Captain Kirk mask, ripped off the sideburns, spray painted it white, cut out the eye holes, and that's Michael Myers. And so I like the idea of buying one of those Kirk masks and doing the conversion myself, even though I think that the actual like kind of the shape mask that Trick or Treat makes are supposed to be pretty good and pretty accurate. I'm a DIY guy. I like doing these little projects. So that'll be arts and crafts time for me, converting a Captain Kirk into a Michael Myers. And again, it's just really appealing to me that for not much money and a little bit of elbow grease and a bit of spray paint, you can get like a screen accurate mask. And as someone who's like, also super into superhero costumes, that is not, it's not as easy with superheroes. So I'm not planning to collect a bunch of superhero costume pieces and masks. However, while we're on the subject of masks, I did recently, I've had custom made for me kind of a high-end replica of a certain superhero mask, and it just arrived recently. It's been being made over the last few months, so this is a bit of sizzle. Very excited to unbox that, which I'll probably do over on Panels to Pixels. So as much as I love toy collecting, and this is obviously my toy collecting channel, comics is my first love. It's my main collection. And I would say that I've, at times been distracted from collecting comics by toys. And sometimes I have to kind of realize that what I'm doing and remember what the goal is here is to have the most amazing comic collection. I'm being glib there. I don't think about it in those terms. But it is nice, as I said, to take stock of what I'm doing and refocus my collecting. And I'm definitely wanting to do that for comics as well this year. I bought a lot of comics in 2025, but I tended to buy lots of cheap comics. I love going to comic fairs and looking through the 50p and the £1 bins and pulling out all the chaff that no one else wants. Your 90s X-Men and, even cheaper than that usually is your 90s Avengers and Fantastic Four and the stuff that absolutely nobody wants. I did buy some cool stuff in 2025. I bought a full run of Peter David Hulk comics, including the kind of the big keys in there. I got the Hulk 340 iconic Todd McFarlane cover and the 345, which is behind me in an acrylic case thing with the McFarlane statue version of it. But in 2026, to get back on topic, I think that I want to try not to buy as much of the cheap stuff and kind of refocus that on buying a few medium-sized keys that I've wanted for a while but have just never wanted to kind of pony up for. And try to discipline myself a little bit to not go for the instant gratification of buying lots of cheap comics, but kind of save up a bit and buy a couple of bigger fish. So for me this year, that would be a Secret Wars number 8. I've wanted this for a long time. It's obviously the first appearance of the black costume, first appearance of the symbiote and everything like that. It's always just been a little bit out of my price range, but as I say, I think that if I do a bit of forward planning and don't buy as much cheap crap, I could conceivably get this one this year. I'd love to get a Vengeance of Bane, first appearance of Bane. When I did my video, the top 20 most important comics of the 90s, this was kind of a notable absence from my collection. I had most of the other comics on that list, but I didn't have a Vengeance of Bane. It's probably, other than the first Harley Quinn, which I don't think I'll ever have, the first Bane is like... is the biggest Batman key of the 90s, I would say. And then a What If number 105. This is the first appearance of Spider-Girl. Again, it's just always been a little bit out of my price range, but this is my era, that late 90s Marvel stuff. And I remember when Spider-Girl first came on the scene. And in fact, I love that Tom DeFalco, Ron Friends run on Spider-Girl. And I remember like the Toy Biz figure back in the day. So yeah, I want to pick one of these up this year. Last year, I kicked the 2 CGC graded comics in my collection. To be perfectly candid, I picked those up because I did the promotion with Whatnot. I've never been into the idea of grading comics, but I did, to kind of replace those, I picked up a couple of these like acrylic, what are they called? Like magnetic comic book display holder things. And I really love those. I love how you can have like, it's a good way of displaying the comic, and it's kind of modular. You can swap comics in and out as your display changes, and you can wall hang them and stuff like that. But I've just got them in a couple of like CGC like feet that you can buy on eBay. And I especially like it because it's a way that I can display these comics and enjoy them without the having to be some kind of qualification from some nobody in America who decides whether our collections are a 9.4 or a 9.6 or a 9.8 or whatever, arbitrarily based on what mood they're in on the day. Another thing that I've kind of been circling for the past little while, and I think that this is hopefully going to be the year that I take the plunge, is collecting original one-sheet movie posters. This is something that I've wanted to get into for a long time, but you know, it feels like an extension of comic book collecting in a way. But one of the things that's I've kind of not been able to get my head around is kind of storage and display. We live in a small apartment, and I haven't like kind of figured out exactly how to do this yet. Now you can buy portfolios that are like sized and designed specifically for one-sheet posters, but they're quite expensive. I think we're talking like £300 for a big, like, it's like an art portfolio, but it's specifically for one-sheet posters, and you know, it's kind of archival grade plastics and stuff like that. The other thing I wanted to do as a bit of a DIY project is make a light box, and you know, that would look cool somewhere, but I just don't know where that's going to go. But mainly I want to focus on posters that I kind of had versions of as a kid and movies that meant a lot to me, and just, you know, posters that give me the feels when I look at them. So I'm thinking about stuff like, you know, Ang Lee's Hulk and Batman Forever. I've always loved that poster, and I had like a smaller version of that poster in my room as a kid. So I would like to get like an original one sheet for that. And also something I've been watching on eBay for the longest time is a set of the Star Wars Special Edition posters, which I just think are beautiful. You know, whatever you think about the special editions, those posters are gorgeous, and they would display so nicely, you know, as a trio. But who's got space for that? And so again, as we talk about kind of broadening what my collection looks like, and it becoming less kind of focused around the idea of action figures, I'm just like super into the idea of collecting ephemera from like, you know, this period. That's like late 90s, early 2000s superhero stuff. Last year I bought an original 1994 Spider-Man rucksack backpack. Yeah, I didn't have this as a kid, but I remember seeing it in the Argos catalogue and stuff like that. And one came up still sealed on eBay for like dirt cheap, for pennies. And I snapped that up. I haven't opened it. I don't know where it's going to go. But that's kind of the stuff that like gets me more excited about action figures nowadays, is the weird stuff. I really want to get a set of the Batman Forever McDonald's fry holders, French fry holders, because they have this art on them that was produced, this like painted art that was produced specifically for McDonald's. And that's the only way, you know, to get a hold of that art, you know, other than digitally or having the originals, I suppose. But yeah, I just think they would look really nice in a frame. They would look really cool. Just all stuff like that, you know, stationery sets, cereal boxes and cereal giveaways. I've got a real thing about egg cups. I don't know. I think this one is like a very specific like childhood memory for me. There is no more like blissful childhood memory to me than sitting down on a Sunday afternoon or something and having eggs and soldiers in a little egg cup. And I used to get a lot of those like character themed egg cups, whether it was like Spider-Man or Batman, Street Sharks, whatever it may be. I don't know. I like the idea of having a little collection of character egg cups from the 90s. I'm going to be picking up a Spider-Man egg cup on eBay soon, I think. And so to kind of give my final thoughts here, I think what I'm trying to express is that I am looking for kind of a more holistic view of collecting, and collecting in a way that kind of better represents my entire personality, represents my interests, represents my childhood and my fondest memories and things like that. I've been ruminating a lot this year on the idea of collecting as expression and as a kind of creative act. And, you know, I don't want my collection to just be like material things. I mean, obviously it is material things, but I don't want it to just be things that I bought on Amazon. I want it to be, interesting things that in the context of my entire collection and juxtaposed against each other tells a story. And I don't think that can happen for me with only 6-inch articulated Marvel Legends, Black Series, that kind of stuff. I think for a while I was very focused on the idea of like a slightly OCD tendency for me of creating this kind of like museum display where everything is like super clean and it's all figures posed on acrylic, tiered stands and stuff like that. And that isn't really where my head is at. And I don't think that's a very good representation of my personality. And I think I was thinking about it at the time in a kind of like economic sense of let's just display like the ultimate version of this character. Let's have the best, the Mayfix Spider-Man on my shelf and no other Spider-Man figures. And then I realized that what I'm sacrificing there is like all the really interesting, kooky, weird Spider-Man that they've made over the years. And I think the breaking point for me was when I picked up that soft vinyl Spider-Man figure and I was like, oh dude, this is so unlike anything else in my collection and weird, and I just fell in love with it. I have to remember kind of what got me back into collecting during the pandemic, and it was creativity. It was wanting a way to kind of not go insane during the lockdown, but it was wanting a way to learn photography, learn toy photography, and wanting to make these like interesting displays and wanting it to be like a kind of functioning part of my YouTube studio. And when I first made this set, I wanted it to feel kind of like a kid's bedroom, specifically from the late 90s, early 2000s, and have that reflected in the kind of franchises that are behind me. And I also wanted it to be a kind of a living display where things would mix up from video to video, which brings me, I guess, to my final thought about collecting and where I'm at as a collector, which is to kind of stop thinking of collecting as like checklists and tasks to be completed, but actually to think about it as like interior design. Think about it as like ornaments in my home that make me happy and enrich my living space and enrich my life, rather than like a bunch of characters on an acrylic stand that aren't aesthetically pleasing and don't inspire me and whatever else. So I'm just looking forward. I have normie tastes at the end of the day. I like superheroes, I like Star Wars, I like horror films. So it's always going to be centered around that. But I'm looking forward to just having a more interesting and varied collection, I think, is that's my main goal in 2026. Hey, thanks for watching. It's New York Toy Fair this weekend. And I'm hopefully, unless there's absolutely nothing interesting comes out of that, then I won't make a video. But I'm sure there will be something that I will find that will inspire me, excite me. So I think I'm gonna make a video about that. That'll be on this channel. And I'm also, as I head into this year with kind of a new perspective on collecting, I want to be making more videos on this channel. It gets a bit tricky because obviously Panels to Pixels is where I make my bread. So that has to kind of take precedence. But even if I just pull up my phone and talk to you for 10 minutes about whatever toy is making me excited that week, I'm going to try and upload more here. Thanks for subscribing and thanks for your patience. And I'll catch you in the next one.